We could actually, a lot of people care for Idaho, but we could have this.
Oh my gosh.
Welcome back, Mighty Vandals, to Tubs at the Club, the Idaho Vandals affiliate on the Big Sky Podcast Network. Today, we are brought to you by Snake River Stampede Whiskey, but we'll tell you a little bit more about that later in the show. I am your host, Dallas Hammer, joined today by brave, bold Brian Marceau.
So, look, we have to start amateur hour right away. Marten had an Easter egg ready for everyone, but he decided to play it serious. Marten, give the people what they want. There we go. If you're a live viewer, you know what we're talking about. If you're a listener, I'm sorry. You just missed Marten having Zach Claus's old University of Nevada bio as our splash page. So, yeah, the Mountaineer Minute happens no matter what.
Speaking of our producer, the best producer on the planet, Marten Heemstra.
It's good to be back. It's the second week of football. I'm excited for this second week of the season.
Guys, let's just jump right into it. Before we get into previewing Idaho's Week 2 opponent, any final takeaways from last week's absolute drubbing, honestly, beat them like a drum, of the Lamar Cardinals? Any final thoughts?
Yeah, I think so. I rewatched the game later, and Idaho's first string defense gave up 3 total points. This is a game on the Big Sky Podcast Power Rankings show where we have Idaho ranked number 2. I said Idaho could have won this 77-3 if they wanted to. Defensively, Idaho looked pretty dang strong. I know, Dallas, you were right to point out some offensive line. They're not struggles. It is for sure nitpicking talking about Idaho against Lamar when we're pointing out things that were, let's say, quote unquote, suboptimal. It's only in comparison to like Idaho versus Montana State or Idaho versus Incarnate Word in the playoffs is the subtext that you referenced for the offensive line. But, you weren't wrong to point out that the offensive line does need to grow to get to that top level of Big Sky. But otherwise, dude, Idaho, Hayden Hatton had 4 catches in the first drive and then only 2 the rest of the game. It's because Idaho didn't need to go to him. That easily could have been a throwback to Vernon Adams Cooper Cup style game for Idaho, where, you know, if Idaho needed Hayden Hatton to have 15 catches, he would have had 15 catches. So no, man. Relative to the entire Big Sky, which I covered in the power rankings episode, Idaho had the only team that might have had a better week than Idaho was Montana State, Dallas. I mean, that's how strong Idaho looked. The easy takeaway after that game was, look, notice the things that we want to be better. Idaho looked good, with a question of can they be great, not taken off the table.
Yeah, I think the only thing I probably could have done a better job clarifying is, like, Idaho absolutely pantsed Lamar. Like, every weakness that we talked about, again, fully nitpicking. This is a game Idaho won by 25 points. Realistically, it was over at halftime. It was 28-0. I know that the second half, you know, still gets played, and no, it's not over till it's over. But come on, if you look at the drive charts here, Lamar had -3 yards, +5 yards, +6 yards, +29 yards on punt, and then got the ball back with 33 seconds left in the second, and they played 2 plays and got 2 yards. That is Lamar's offensive output from the first half. When Idaho went touchdown, punt, touchdown. Like, this game was over. Idaho, absolutely a top 10 team in the FCS in my eyes. Everything we nitpicked about was exactly that. Nitpicking what is an absolutely great team.
Yeah, I guess, sorry, one last point before we move on. I do think we all have to brace ourselves for the fact that Giovanni McCoy is going to throw more than 6 picks this year. And that's not going to be a problem. Part of it's because he's going to get more reps, and the offense is, I think that Jason Eck has shown he's already trusting Giovanni and McCoy a bit more than he did for the overwhelming majority of last season. But that's just going to be reality. It's hard to do better than Giovanni did with throwing 6 picks on the season last year, Dallas. So just be prepped for that. McCoy still looks good. He looks like he's still in the discussion for top quarterback in the Big Sky, at the very least, a top 3, worst case, top 4 quarterback. But I do think that's going to be a statistical change, because, I mean, he almost threw, he threw 1 pick versus Lamar. He should have thrown 2. If it would have been 2 against any okay Big Sky team, but that's fine. He's easily good enough. This is just a reality of when McCoy has more options and he's trusted more, then there's just more for him to take in. He's going to throw picks. Good quarterbacks do throw some picks total, and it's not a big deal.
Exactly. You know, that was the one thing I complained about with Giovanni last year, was that as a true freshman, for some reason, I had this feeling like, hey, why the hell isn't he thrown to his third option? He looks at, realistically, Hatton Jackson and then takes off and gets a huge gain. As obviously he is being trusted more in the passing game, I think we absolutely saw it against Lamar. I think we're going to see it against Nevada. I think we're going to see it again throughout the rest of the year. I think you're absolutely right, Brian. It's something to keep in mind. I'm assuming the interception numbers will go up, but typically if the interception numbers go up, it usually means pass attempts are going up, meaning completions are going up, passing yards are going up, and touchdowns are going up. It's one of those things you live with. So
yeah, touchdowns are obviously going to be fine. I do want to hit on one last thing from last week. The biggest winner of last week is all the Idaho fans who never have to listen to those shitty announcers again.
Oh.
The biggest losers in America are the people who tune in purposefully to ESPN Plus Lamar streams. So that reason I bring that up, guys, look, the reason we recorded late today, and reason I was late recording last night for the Power Rankings episode, is because we try to kick ass on Tubbs, but this does have to fit in with some other stuff in our lives.
Like jobs, unfortunately.
Yeah, I felt pretty embarrassed for the Lamar announcers who appeared like they didn't even bother to have an Idaho roster. Like, I mean, we already covered the Chavez thing, but in the second half, it was clear the announcers were unaware that there could be any tall white guy on Idaho who made a catch who was not Hayden Hatton. It's like when Alex Moore made both his catches, the guy sounded just befuddled that, holy crap, who has ever heard of a tall white tight end? How could this possibly happen on this team? The guys were just completely out of their league, and it's ESPN Plus.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, Brian, lateral move. Moving on. Guys, Idaho taking on former conference foe Nevada, both conference foe in the Big Sky and in the WAC. Now, Nevada, obviously, in the Mountain West Conference. Brian, I'll give you a quick little breakdown on Nevada football. Currently coached by Ken Wilson in his second year at the helm. He's 2-11 overall, 2-10 last year, 0-1 this year after getting smoked by USC last week. Previously, Ken Wilson was the linebackers coach at Wazoo from 2013 to 2019. Then he went to Oregon, was the linebackers coach in 2020. In 2021, he was their co-defensive coordinator and inside linebackers coach before getting the job at Nevada. He has no head coaching experience. We believe they are 11 personnel. They don't publish depth charts or even their media guide notes anymore. Last time they published that was before FCS Incarnate Word in week 3 of last year, which they lost on the way to losing every game for the rest of the year. So maybe that was bad juju. Not entirely sure about it. They do play 5 defensive backs, highlighted by Patty jumping into the comments saying former Eastern defensive back Trey Weed, who we've definitely seen burned on the Kibbe Dome turf before, is one of the prime players for Nevada. They finished 11th out of 12th in the Mountain West Conference. Brian, what do we think about Nevada?
Well, I think this is a great chance for Idaho to pick up what would be a huge win for the playoff resume. Like you hit it exactly. Nevada, they lose 66-14 to USC. Hey, USC is very good, but like you said, coming off finishing 2-11 in the year before, including closing the season on was that a 11 game losing streak? No, a 10 game. My bad. They're on an 11 game losing streak. They lost 10 consecutive games to close 2022. Not a single guy on Nevada was voted to the Mountain West preseason offensive team or all conference defensive team. So if there's any sort of turnaround, it's going to take Nevada some time. I want to sidetrack the show now to spend 1 second bitching about how terrible the Mountain West website was. And if you haven't donated to Tubs of the Club's Patreon, you should donate just because of the labor Dallas and I had to do trying to hunt through the dog shit that is Mountain West media. Marten has the stats page up right now. Yeah, look, the Big Sky is a great entity, guys. Mountain West, it'd be cool to be in Mountain West, but the Mountain West is not the cream of the crop in athletic administration. Circling back to Nevada, this is not going to be one of the FCS games where there's an obvious talent gap between the two teams. Now, depth could matter, and that's where the scholarship totals for the FBS do give a lot of FBS teams an advantage over the FCS. But look, I've seen a decent amount of analytic projections for this game for quite a while that essentially are calling Idaho at Nevada a toss-up. And God damn it, Patty in the comments section is that Vandal Web. Thank you, Patty. Sorry, I'm circling back and taking a very long time to say Idaho's not going to be outclassed in this game talent-wise. It's going to be a huge chance for Idaho to pick up a second win in the out-of-conference, which would put Idaho in cruise control for, at minimum, a playoff berth. So this, to me, is among the most important games Idaho has the entire season in setting themselves up for the playoffs. Or we saw Idaho look great last week. If Idaho is truly a very good to great FCS team, Nevada is absolutely the type of team that the Vandals could pick off. And this is the kind of game that I think Jason Eck and co are going to have to trust Giovanni McCoy and the wideout crew a little bit more than what we saw for most games during last season, because that's an area that really, I think Nevada can be exploited.
Brian, I got to be honest. If it weren't for the fact that Nevada is an FBS school, so people are going to care more because it's an FCS versus FBS game, this is the least interesting game to me that Idaho is going to play all year. I think Nevada is a fucking tire fire. I think Nevada panicked when Jay Norvell completely screwed them and left for Colorado State, taking most of the good players at Nevada with him. For anybody that doesn't know much about Nevada football, Nevada won more than 7 games, or 7 or more games, 4 years in a row. They won, I think, 8-7, 7-8, went to 4 straight bowl games. Jay Norvell was the head coach, left to go to interconference Colorado State, took really any half-decent player with him to Colorado State, who were pretty terrible last year. returns are, they're going to be pretty terrible this year. That's a pretty big rebuilding project. But that's how low Nevada is in the Mountain West, that their coach took another job in the conference and completely burned every bridge he had with them on the way out. That is to say, Nevada is an absolutely terrible football team. Last year, we're stats guys on this show. Last year, Sagarin rankings had Nevada finish as team 148 and Idaho was 118. So Sagarin, again, advanced stats that rank FBS and FCS schools. This year, Idaho is still ranked above Nevada. Idaho is 123, Nevada is 127. Obviously, that doesn't mean a whole lot, but what's going on is the advanced stats are all saying, yeah, Idaho is a better team than Nevada. I don't particularly think it's very close. Taylor Cash in the comment section saying, hey, they have Circus. They got that going for them. Yeah, realistically, that's what they've got. They've got a great parody TV show, and that's about it, Brian. There's not a whole lot of interesting things on this team. You talk about even their quarterback, Brendan Lewis. He was a starter at Colorado. 2 years ago, he started every single game as a true freshman. Last year, he started their first game against TCU, left the team halfway through the year. Cool, I guess, that you had a Pac-12 / technically soon to be Big 12 starting quarterback that is now playing for you. He was not good at Colorado. You see Deion Sanders go in there and absolutely rip everything apart, add in a whole bunch of new guys, and lo and behold, way better in game one than they were at any point in the last 3 years. All of that to say, I'm not really thrilled by Brendan Lewis. I don't see anything scary about him, Brian.
Well, it's hard to gauge who would be a true threat because if you look at the stats from 2022 to 23, the guys who contributed against USC, none of them are leaders for Nevada last season at all, what that reads to me is a version of the Idaho State, completely rotating through essentially the entire program, which based off early returns doesn't look radically different. I mean, the Nevada looked not that different against USC than Portland State looked against Oregon. So I know that I think because the Mountain West has such terrible information to sort through, I honestly think the more intriguing angle for this game is talking about what Idaho is going to do to exploit Nevada, because like with how many new guys are on the Nevada roster, there isn't a ton to preview other than what we saw against USC. So I guess Dallas, question for you to move this into the angle that I think is more magnetizing for people like you. What do you think Idaho needs to do differently against Nevada than against a team like Lamar, when Idaho could do essentially whatever they wanted?
I mean, you got to clean up the penalties. That to me is the number one thing. It is an FBS school that is definitely one of, if not the worst FBS school in the country. I don't think there's a whole lot of teams that you could say would comfortably lose to Nevada. I think any team that you're thinking Nevada could beat, it's probably not going to be a blowout, probably not going to be a convincing win. It's probably going to be pretty close. This is not a great team. Again, like Brian said, should not see a massive talent discrepancy. What we're going to see is this team's got more depth than Idaho. So what that means is you have to play a clean football game. You cannot give up 100 yards in penalties like you did to Lamar. That to me is number one. You just can't do that. If you're out there committing 15-yard personal fouls every other drive, Eck and Co are going to be pissed off, because that is one way to lose a football game you should absolutely go in and upset this team with.
100% right. And this goes to the nitpicking of the Lamar game. And I think Nevada, again, we're unanimous. We know that because it's an FBS on FCS matchup, like, look, math just tells you the FBS team is more likely to win this game, but we're not particularly impressed with Nevada. But I think this is a game where we're going to, even though Nevada's not very good Mountain West, I think we'll get a better gauge on what the offensive line actually is for Idaho, because Nevada is going to be better defensively than Lamar. That's a very low bar to clear that Nevada will clear, subterranean fiber optic cable we're talking about. But because of that, I'm not yet confident in the run game being what is going to be able to decimate Lamar in the way that I really think this is the kind of game where Giovanni McCoy and Idaho's top 3 receivers, all of whom are former all Big Sky talents, including most recent Big Sky Offensive Player of the Week, Hayden Hatton. That's the direction I think Idaho is going to be a little bit more pass heavy. Not nothing crazy. This isn't going to be like Idaho State, where Idaho State ran 5 times against San Diego State and passed 63 times. Like, obviously that's not a Jason Eck team, but I wouldn't be shocked at all if we do see the pass to rush discrepancy being slightly in favor of the pass, because that's the type of talent that I think can push Nevada and give Idaho some breathing space, where it's kind of like Sacramento State and Colorado State last year, where I think Idaho believes they can not just narrowly win this game. I think Idaho believes they can win by 10 points or more. And part of the way they do that and get that breathing space, I think, is leaning on the pass game a bit more and letting the most talented dudes on the team dictate the pace.
I think you're fully correct, Ryan. That's how you win this game, and not just because, again, it sounds like I'm going to take a shot at the kid. And I truly don't mean it as a shot. Trey Weed is playing meaningful football for this team. We saw Trey Weed play multiple years at Idaho, and to be honest, get burned, get smoked pretty frequently against Idaho, both at the Kibbe Dome and up at Roos Field. Just not one of those things that's going to instill you with confidence if you are a deep dive into Nevada, realizing that one of their best defensive backs has played Idaho and has been burned by Idaho, by Therese Trainer, by Hayden Hatton, by Jermaine Jackson. To me, that is how you win this football game. Hopefully the offensive line can get a little bit more push. I know that Woods had that incredible 98-yard run or 96-yard run, whatever it ended up being. But on the whole, running game averages weren't quite as high as I'm assuming the coaches would like to see. So yes, it would be nice to get that done, especially against a front that is, they're an FBS front. I'm sure the guys that are out there have the talent to be FBS players. It's just maybe pretty low end. That is, you want to see the offensive line take strides and push, because again, if you're talking about North Dakota State or South Dakota State or Montana State coming into this game, you probably expect their offensive lines to bully the Nevada front 7 around. I don't know if Idaho's offensive line is quite there yet. So what do? You throw it to 3 all-conference receivers and an all-conference quarterback leading the way. That's how you win this game. You score a ton more points than they do.
Yeah, and on the defensive side of the ball, there is one thing that I find like 1% anxiety-inducing about Nevada, which is Brendan Lewis is mobile. So like he's when I say mobile, like, I mean, we saw Dante Sacheret for a half look kind of okay against Idaho last season. Yeah, it's different roster, but just putting the premise forth that there's multiple ways Brendan Lewis can hurt a team if Nevada is not getting their ass kicked. So, to me, this is obviously Lamar was not much of a test for the Idaho defense. But they looked good. I mean, whatever in the ways Idaho could have been tested against Lamar, obviously Idaho passed. Idaho speed-wise looked pretty dang good. Jakari Larman looked disruptive on the D-line in a way like that we've been waiting for Idaho to have someone for the last few years. I mean, I'm going back to Noah Ellis, not put down to Noah Ellis, but Noah Ellis did not pop at Idaho the way the name would have made you think and the size would have made you think. Jakari Larman absolutely did against Lamar. But I do think making sure that Lewis, who is, like you already hit the Colorado pedigree in a negative sense of being on the terrible Colorado roster that was purged. He just left prior to the purge. Lewis would obviously not be the best passing quarterback in the Big Sky. It would not be close. But the combination of being able to hurt teams with his legs a bit and pass good enough, that is mildly concerning, mostly because of still the young linebacking core. They looked good. They look, and by the way, Trey Thomas looks great. He looks like we haven't taken a step back in the middle whatsoever. We still do have some youth at that position. That's a potential area where if a guy like Brendan Lewis is on, That's an area you could see Idaho look a little weak if the guys are still in the midst of their learning curve.
As a gentle pushback to that, I will say that Brendan Lewis had 188 rushing yards in his single year as the full-time Colorado starter. Again, terrible team, and yes, he is mobile. That is, like, you're going to have to expect the linebackers to cover him, and I think that's the most intriguing part of this story to Vandal fans. Again, you assume that you're probably going to see some of the freshmen play again. Jackson Eck played a lot. Exree Alexander played a lot. Dylan Lane obviously starting. You expect to see some of these younger guys. Hopefully they can keep up with Lewis. But to me, Brian, this is one of those games. I just don't see anything about Nevada that screams absolutely terrifying to Idaho. If I'm in the Vandal locker room, I'm going into this game expecting we're going to go in there and win. And am I wrong in that assumption, Brian?
No, I don't think at all that you're wrong in that assumption. To me, this is like Jason Eck. He has 4 out of conference games so far, and Idaho has shown up to all 4. The talent level Idaho's playing against doesn't seem to matter. Home versus away does not seem to matter either. Big environment, kind of like University of Indiana University or Washington State, versus lower key environment like Lamar. None of that seems to matter. Idaho shows up to play for out of conference. The coaching staff they know how much this matters. Obviously, look, if we think it's important, obviously the coaching staff thinks so to a different degree. They know. I mean, hey, Jason Eck was part of the big push to get Western Oregon off of the schedule to get Lamar on, even though Idaho lost that home game, because he's looking forward to the playoffs. You know how much 2 wins, including an FBS win, would mean for Idaho's potential playoff resume and the chance to have not only momentum heading into conference play, but also to have the chance to have an easily buy-worthy resume if the Vandals can pick up 2 out of conference wins plus 6 Big Sky wins. This buys Idaho a ton of margin for error and makes it virtual. To me, if Idaho wins this game, the only way they stay out of the playoffs is via face planting in the conference season, which there's no reason to believe they will. So no, I don't think you're wrong at all to think Idaho has a reasonable chance to pick off this game, because this game is going to mean so goddamn much more to Idaho as well than it does to Nevada. Nevada knows they suck. I mean, this is just and also a win over an FCS team doesn't mean that much when you're in the Mountain West. But for Idaho, when the talent level, Idaho gets to prove the talent level is even or uneven in Idaho's direction and by margin for error for the playoffs. No, dude, this is a huge game for Idaho.
Brian, not to look ahead, but if Idaho does win this game, you're 2-0 going into a Pac-12 game on the road, which, again, you probably don't expect to win that, but sitting at 2-1 before you go into conference play with a win over an FBS team, I mean, just like Brian, like Patty said, super important for playoff seeding. Getting again, Nevada is terrible. Like, don't get us wrong, guys. Even if Nevada wins this game, they're an FCS school with considerably more scholarships than Idaho. They are expected to win this game. If they should win this game. If they are not going to, yeah, huge bummer for them. But to Idaho, it's still an FBS win. It doesn't matter that they're a terrible FCS school. That is a big time victory. As Racketit 69 says, FBS win against the Mountain West team would turn heads in the Treasure Valley. It really would. Idaho goes out there and beats Nevada. Boise State's going to do that same thing this year. That is going to level some people's eyes a little bit with the expectations there. But for what this means for Idaho, you call that, 1.5 wins with Nevada there? I mean, I don't think a 6-win Idaho team could get into the playoffs, but a 6-win Idaho team with the schedule that they have and a win over an FBS squad is certainly on the door for that final playoff spot. So like you said, Brian, this game is huge. If you win this game, you feel a whole lot better about the floor of this season because you have just raised the floor of this ceiling to fringe playoff team. Raise the floor of this ceiling. Raise the floor of this team to fringe playoff team.
Yeah, so I want to hit the comment section other than a couple other posters. So, hey, Sam Dane says, long-time listener, first-time caller, still getting used to the Vandals being a talented team. Sam, a.k.a. former fraternity brother of mine. Yeah, dude, sometimes it's uncomfortable getting comfortable. I want to hit what Patty said in the comment section earlier regarding, God damn it, losing the dude's name, starting quarterback for Nevada, Dallas.
Last year, Lucas Johnson.
Year.
This year, Sam Vidlac.
Yeah. Patty made a comparison to Lucas Johnson, who started for Montana last year, which Lucas Johnson was a good rusher who was an inaccurate passer who could hit guys if they were open. He was not going to beat you deep. That's what Patty said he saw from the snaps he saw out of I'm fading right now with starting quarterback for Nevada.
Brendan Lewis.
Yes. Thank you, Patty, for that. And last comment section, I want to hit Kevin Marshall. I said the same thing about Breathing Room today with Stone. Great minds think alike. Yeah, Kevin Marshall, host of FCS Nation Radio. Anyway, so I think we're closing in on the time to pick the score because I think it's impossible to listen to this show right now, Dallas, and not come away with the fact that one, there's just not that much information to have for Nevada unless you are a Nevada Wolfpack honk. But two,
well, even then, Brian, I'm going to jump in real quick. I don't even think that information is out there. I think Nevada, if you want to hear what I think of the Nevada program, I think that Nevada fucking panicked. I think Jay Norvell screwed them and they reached out to their, maybe not most famous alum, but one of the more famous guys from the Chris Alt era. Like, hey, you know what? Well, let's go back to the well. He's never been a coach before or head coach before, but he's coached here for 20 years. Let's bring him in. I think that's what Nevada's done. I don't think there's any information on Nevada because they're trying to keep any information from going out because I've seen Idaho do that for 25 damn years. When Idaho was absolutely terrible, it was hard to get any coverage of them and hard to get anything out of the athletic department. I think that's what Nevada is doing right now because I think even Nevada knows they screwed this up. Sorry, Brian. Second part.
Well, no, dude. I mean, you're right. It is an unbelievably rough look to think of Norvell leaving Nevada for the cluster that is Colorado State. I mean, Colorado State was killed by Sacramento State last year. Colorado State also was killed by Washington State, which I just don't think there's any progress being made there, which is a long way of saying Colorado State looks awful, but Nevada looks like they're trending down more than Colorado State. This is probably the single most winnable FCS FPS game that we're going to see in the Big Sky or maybe even the Missouri Valley for this entire season. So no, I think we're ready for game predictions. We just need to get a word from one of our sponsors beforehand, which we're going to talk about Snake River Stampede Canadian Whiskey, which I've told you guys, and I will tell you again and again and again. I buy Snake River exclusively by the handle, but the $25 it costs for a fifth makes it one of the best buys in Idaho State liquor stores, which there's two different versions. You have the entry-level Snake River Stampede. That's the one I buy by the handle. It's got a double barrel finish starting in first fill bourbon barrels and finished in Oloroso sherry casks. If you go with their small batch 1915 edition, that's aged an additional 2 years, but its double barrel finishes is from first fill bourbon to ex-Canadian rye casks. Both whiskeys, you can really get strong hints of different flavors from the barrel finish. It's a 3-grain Canadian whiskey, which is actually relatively unique to a lot of the different Canadian whiskeys available in Idaho liquor stores. The 10% rye and 10% malted barley, those are flavoring grains. They add an additional punch of flavor both. So if you have not tried Snake River Stampede, either version, get it for tailgating this year, guys. You won't regret it.
All right. Marten has joined us back in. We're going to go to you first, Marten. Idaho versus Nevada. What's the score?
I'm going to go Idaho 35, Nevada 25.
Brian?
Yeah, I'm looking in the comment section. I see Captain58 saying Idaho by field goal 27-24. KB says 37-27 Vandals. Taylor Cash says 38-20 Idaho. Jason Mayer 38-30 Idaho. Mark Trivelpiece, Snake River is good stuff. Give it a try. Trust me, I'm a professional. Oh, sorry, got lost in the content there. Andrew Townsend, 41-20 Vandals. Dane Moon, Idaho 37, Nevada 24. I think Dane's more along with what I'm thinking. So I'm going to go 37-21 Idaho.
Those are all kind of in the same ballpark. I'm going to go 31-21 Idaho, but I do think I agree with, again, most of the comment section saying this is going to be a multi-score game. I feel like that's where we're headed with this. In 2022, Nevada averaged 18.8 points a game and allowed 30.9. I don't necessarily see anything about this team that means they're going to do a whole lot better than that. 31-21 Vandals. Just jumping in here as well. Sean Foster, Idaho by 100. Love that. Patty Ferks does say the O-line might struggle a little bit. And Rakutits saying 31-28 with the game-winning field goal, not the Brotzman style. That would be nice.
No, Patty just hit on, honestly, what I think is fair to say. The only anxiety we actually have about Idaho against Nevada is the test that this will be for the offensive line, because there wasn't much read truly out of Lamar.
All right, guys. That's it about Idaho, Nevada. Let's move on to the rest of the Big Sky. Gentlemen, how did we do last week? I don't see the stats up. Oh, there we go. Brian and I went a perfect 12-0, and Martin went
Asterisk
9-3.
11-0.
Sorry. Asterisk 11-0 for Brian and I. 8-3 for Martin, because we didn't actually pick the Idaho State game because that's how little anybody cared about it.
Which turned out to be a mistake.
I mean, it really did. They might actually be fun bad this year, which is something. Unfortunately, because of that, we're not going to commit to the bit of just not picking Idaho State games at all this year. I thought that was what we were going to do. Thought it would have been kind of funny to just probably myself and just myself only. But I promise you, we will pick the Idaho State game. So let's jump right in, guys.
Can I preface this? I just want to preface this. This is a rough week for the Big Sky. For anyone who's actually looked for the schedule itself, which I did during the Big Sky Power Rankings episode, there is one Big Sky home game this entire week. And there are a lot of Big Sky FBS matchups that are nowhere near as favorable as Idaho at Nevada. And then even the FCS on FCS matchups, minus Montana, are not that favorable.
So we're going to pick ISU, but we're producing live in public. I literally left work 60 seconds before jumping on this show. So my brain is a little bit all over the place. But the one thing I'm not going to forget is if you're looking for a great all-inclusive week-long vacation, don't look past your backyard. Hughes River Expeditions has been Vandal-owned and operated since 1976, and they're ready to take you on the vacation of a lifetime. Enjoy a multi-day trip down the Middle Fork of the Salmon, the main Salmon River of no return, the Salmon River Canyons, or even take a trip down the Selway River. You can check out special trips like one to see the Perseid meteor shower, camp on pristine beaches, run amazing whitewater, hike scenic trails, spot wildlife, soak in the beautiful natural hot springs, and even fish some of the most remote stretches of river in the entire country. Just bring your clothes, let HRE handle the rest. Grab a paddle, catch dinner, and ride the bull all throughout the Gem State. Call them now at 800-262-1882 or check them out at hughesriver.com. Gentlemen, I know everyone has been waiting for this moment. Idaho State versus Utah State. Martin, the floor is yours. Martin, you're muted.
Hashtag amateur hour.
Utah State, as a surprise to nobody.
So if you listened to the Power Rankings episode last night, you found out that Idaho State in week 1 against San Diego State threw 63 times and had 5 total rushes that were not quarterback runs, which counts sacks. So five times a guy who is not the quarterback rushed the ball on purpose for Idaho State against San Diego State. That itself makes Idaho State move from team we forget about picking to at least once they become must watch to just see what they're doing, because at worst case scenario, this team's going to be fun. Cody Hawkins is committing very hard to being the anti-Charlie Raggle, including having a press conference where he referenced, yes, there are moral victories. And if we have enough moral victories, the team's going to get better. Players are going to feel fulfilled. Thank you, Cody Hawkins, for doing that. But this is not the week Idaho State is going to pick up a win. They're obviously going to lose to Utah State. Even looking good against San Diego State, like the quarterback still has to be resolved. Jordan Cook looked like he started through 41 passes, but he's a freshman. He's got a ton of talent, but boy, does he have some decision-making to improve on Utah State.
Yeah, I mean, I got to agree with you guys. The comment section saying USU, Blue Aggies, like, it's cool that Idaho State's getting a little bit better. I would love for that to turn into a fun rivalry game as long as Idaho is at the FCS level. But no, Utah State is not particularly great, but they're going to crush Idaho State. It shouldn't be particularly close. Next up, UC Davis at Oregon State. Oregon State being the number 16 team in the FBS.
Oregon State.
Obviously, Oregon State's going to win this game. But if you're watching, what to look for out of UC Davis is Lan Larison looks like he's going to probably replace about 90+% of what UC Davis lost in Alonzo Gilliam graduating in week 1. Larison 16 rushes for 109 yards and 3 touchdowns. Also pay attention to Trent Tompkins. He sees the ball on the ground and through the air. But obviously, again, Oregon State's going to win this. It will be a meaningful moral victory if UC Davis keeps it close. And look, if UC Davis keeps it close, the entire league is on notice that the narrative of UC Davis being among the best in the Big Sky, but just having shitty luck keeping them out of the playoffs. Man, if they keep it close against Oregon State, they're making their case for top in the conference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, honestly, if they can keep it close against Oregon State or make Oregon State even sweat a little bit in that fourth quarter, that is a very terrifying thing for what UC Davis could do to this conference. I think this is going to be pretty big blowout for Oregon State. Oregon State, I think, deserves to be in the top 25. I don't know if 16th is quite high, quite where they should be, but they are a very good team in what is going to be the final year of the Pac-12. Jason Mayer has Beavis 48, Davis 17. That's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking this is going to be a 30-point victory. I don't see UC Davis hanging super close in this one. Again, Brian gave some good points on things to look for, but at the end of the day, I think just Oregon State is just too talented. Top 5, Portland State taking on another FBS school, this time taking on Wyoming.
Wyoming by at least 50, I think. That I know they say they're top 5, but that was worse than when Idaho lost to Penn State a couple years ago. That was bad.
Yeah, Portland State scored in the first quarter too. Like, it wasn't a garbage time touchdown that stopped the bleeding against the third stringers. No, Oregon State scored and then, surrendered only like 70 consecutive points. So Wyoming also coming off a huge win over Texas Tech. This is Wyoming looking like they're trending in the opposite direction in the Mountain West as Nevada. So I don't think this is going to be close. So Portland State always plays the most worthless out-of-conference schedule in the Big Sky, where they always have 2 FBS games, and then they don't even have the dignity to schedule a D2 game. They schedule their third game against American or some other God knows what conference team. So no, Wyoming is going to win this easily. I guess if you're looking for any glimmer from the Portland State side, it's, does Dante Sacheret have a bit of a rebound, which it would be hard to not have a rebound relative to what we saw against Oregon. But Sacheret being striking both on the ground and through the air is really the only chance for Portland State to pick up wins in the Big Sky season, never mind in the OOC.
Yeah. Andrew Townsend saying Portland State Athletic Department rolling in the Bucks. C. Hansen saying 65-10 for Wyoming. Jason Mayer 47-4. I love the 2 safeties. That's great. Taylor Cash saying, hey, we play Wyoming next year. Take a look. Patty Ferks, tell me this wouldn't be the most PSU thing ever to put up a big performance. It is true. They've beaten a Pac-12 team before.
But they
First year
weren't
Barney
complete
Ball.
garbage the year they did. That was their playoff year.
That was first year of Barney Ball back then. Guys, I think we are not giving Portland State enough credit. As deep as 6 minutes left in the first quarter, Portland State was only trailing by a touchdown. For anybody that doesn't know Portland State or doesn't care to follow Portland State, it was 8-0 a couple minutes into their game against Oregon last week. It was 8-7 the drive after that, and then they promptly lost 81-7. So, yeah, this game is going to be really, 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 really bad. Not that bad, but Portland State should lose this by 35. Let's move on. Another FCS FBS matchup, guys. We got a bunch of these to get through. Eastern Washington at Fresno State.
Fresno State. I think it'll be something like a casual 17-point win for them.
Yeah, pretty easy Fresno State pick. If you're watching Eastern, you want to see if Kiko Vesperis continues to look like he could threaten to be a top half of the Big Sky quarterback. And there were moments against North Dakota State where Eastern looked stronger on the defensive side of the ball. Obviously not the entire game. They surrendered 500 plus yards against North Dakota State, but you're looking for moments of where Eastern looks tougher on the defensive side of the ball where you can generalize and say, okay, if they can look like this for a quarter or 2 quarters or a half against Fresno, they can probably look like this against Montana.
Yeah, I think the only thing that needs to be mentioned here is Patty Firks in the comment section. We're going to get blown TF out. Jason Mayer picking Fresno 49, Eastern 13. I think that's probably about what the score is going to be.
I thought Patty was a University of Idaho student, and I just heard the word we.
Yeah, we'll work on that.
Jesus Christ.
Patty, your internet dads are very disappointed in you. Guys, this game's not going to be close, but Eastern's going to get blown out. This is they got handled by North Dakota State, and Fresno State's probably better than North Dakota State. This is just not good. This is
hot take.
Yeah,
maybe this will be like the 2018 Idaho Fresno game, the first one back.
My God.
Ouch. Thanks, Martin, for really just ruining every thought I had of having no nightmares tonight. Really appreciate
gloves.
That. Yeah. Ugh. Speaking of Kikoa, 2 gloves. Anyways, guys, let's move on to yet another dog shit game. Cal Poly at San Jose State.
San Jose State.
I'm not going to call this a complete dog shit game. Look, obviously San Jose State is going to win this game, but I think San Jose State is more analogous to a good Big Sky team talent-wise. And look, Cal Poly's going to score some points this season, guys. Sam Heward has, to me, the best arm talent in the Big Sky. He's not going to be the best quarterback, but he definitely has the best arm talent. I think Cal Poly's they're going to move up the Big Sky totem pole throughout this season, but they're going to lose at San Jose State. But keep in mind, San Jose State should have lost to Portland State last year. So San Jose absolutely has the chance to lose against not that great Big Sky teams, but they're not going to this week.
Yeah. On the other foot of that, San Jose State also lost to Auburn, Fresno State, and Utah State all on the road by a touchdown or less. So team that went 7-5, yeah, could have certainly lost to Portland State and really changed that season. Also could have won a couple more games and turn it around. Long story short, guys, this is going to be bad. Jason Mayer saying San Jose 35-28. Patty Firk saying the Spartans look good. Cal Poly looks like a 2010 Eastern team. It's probably because Bo Baldwin was trying to build a 2010s Eastern team. I don't think Cal Poly's got the horses to get through in this one.
I do have one minor question. What about the Spartans looks good? They lost by almost 40 in week 0 to USC. And then lost by almost 30 to Oregon State. So, look, those are good teams they lost to. But I don't think San Jose State has shown this season that they're any sort of threat yet with getting their ass kicked week 1 and week 2. But you also have to imagine with Cal Poly after getting your ass kicked by Pac-12 teams is going to feel pretty damn good.
Yeah, I think I don't know what. Thank you, Taylor Cash, mentioning nice pun. That was a mascot joke I made about the horses, and there I wanted one person to laugh at that joke. That's the sign of a good joke when one person understands it. I mean, I don't want to get into a deep dive about San Jose State, but they lost to a team that might have a repeat Heisman winner for the first time in 50 years. I think Oregon State is absolutely top 25 team. You know, it's tough to kind of know when you go in there and you know you're going to get your ass shredded in 2 games. So moving on.
You could just read the San Jose State 2 deep.
That is very true. We've done that before on this show. Guys, we're going to just jump right ahead to another really bad football game. Northern Colorado versus Incarnate Word. This is FCS on FCS, but what are we thinking, Martin?
Incarnate Word.
Yeah, Incarnate Word is going to win this game. Look, Incarnate Word's 0-1 lost at UTEP 28-14 in week 1, but Northern Colorado just didn't show anything against Abilene Christian. Look, Abilene Christian is an ascending, relatively speaking, Big Sky team or FCS team. But man, Northern Colorado was the disappointment of week 1 in the Big Sky. So I agree with Taylor Cash. Incarnate Word is going to win. They're going to win by a lot.
Yeah, Patty Ferks, UIW, Taylor Cash, the Word by a lot. Jason Mayer, Word to your mother, 48-1. This is going to be one of those games, I think, that makes Ed Lamb maybe regret taking this job. If there's ever a moment that you second guess your decision, this is probably going to be one of them. I'm assuming Incarnate Word will absolutely smoke Northern Colorado. Guys, I would say let's get to a good game, but there's not a whole lot of those. So we're just going to keep powering through this schedule here. Montana at Utah Tech, formerly known as Dixie State for any of the longtime FCS fans.
Utah Tech.
Montana's going to win this. Like, Utah Tech just lost by 43 to Montana State. And the interesting part to me from this game is Montana was underwhelming against Butler, but there were some moments in the game that I saw that I think are promising for Montana, particularly in the first half. Yes, I know the running game in the second half is kind of what Montana used to put the game away, but Brent Peace looked like he has some flexibility on the offensive end that was just not there for Montana. Saw much more spread looks than we typically have. Sam Vidlak has an arm. He hasn't played a ton at the D1 level, so look, there's going to be a learning curve. He threw 2 picks, one of which was absolutely not his fault. The receiver bobbled a pass and essentially handed it to the Lamar DB, the Butler DB. But I don't think Montana's offensive line is their big issue now offensively, but I think they have some pieces. They have some talent, but in the receiving room as well. So I think Montana's going to win this pretty easily. I also think they're going to be a bit motivated to look better than they did against Butler. And I think this Montana team is better than what we saw week 1 against Butler. Because again, no matter how you want to shit on Montana because of fan base expectations, we know they're not a bad team. So Montana's going to win this pretty easy.
Yeah, Montana should win this pretty handily. I don't know if they're going to necessarily look good doing it, but I think that Bobby Hauck is okay with not looking good because he's certainly committed to that in the second stretch of his time at Montana. Everybody in the comment section saying Montana. Jason Mayer, 28-7. Taylor Cash, 35-17. C. Hansen, 35-20. The seat gets hotter, Jason Mayer says. I think that's the only thing interesting about these out-of-conference games for Montana is, does the seat get hotter if they win this game close and it doesn't feel like a bloodbath? That's really the only interesting thing about this game to me. Moving forward, guys, just a couple more bad games before we get to a very interesting game. Sac State at Texas A&M Central Commerce, or whatever the hell that, it's too long. Your TAMUCC. That's what I care about.
Sac State. And I'm just going to be honest here. This seems like we're going through some veggies to get to the steak.
100%.
Sacramento State. Look, Texas A&M Commerce was annihilated by UC Davis, I think 48-3 in week 1. Sacramento State was still playing through quarterback, who they're going to start at quarterback in week 1, Carson Camp and Caden Bennett. I think Caden Bennett won the starting job after week one, because this isn't last season where one guy's the passer and one guy's the rusher. Both quarterbacks, Carson Camp and Caden Bennett, are throwers. Caden Bennett just happens to be able to run and looks like a better passer than Carson Camp. So that's your moment of intrigue. But the Big Sky on Southland violence will continue.
Yeah, this is going to be a really bad game. Again, as you've probably noticed, if you're still listening to us, this is not a great week for the Big Sky here. Patty Frerk saying Sac State Commerce isn't good. Taylor Cash sacked by a lot. Jason Mayer 42-6 for Sac State. Yeah, this is going to be a bloodbath. Brian, I think you're absolutely right. I think Caden Bennett looked better than Carson Camp last week. It'd be interesting to see if they do stick to the kind of 2 quarterback thing. Do the old Paul Petrino. I'm not going to name a starter until the conference starts, but obviously my kid's going to play because he's my kid. There's no kid here, so maybe they try to play a couple games, and maybe we see a different battle out of camp. But I mean, going off of week one, Caden Bennett looked like the guy. I think he looked better than Dunaway did last year, and honestly, not a big fan of the 2 quarterback thing. So maybe Bennett ends up being better than the combo of O'Hara and Dunaway. But all of this to say, Sac State is absolutely going to run away with this. Marten making jokes in the outline. I cannot say that because I'm always the person that says things and gets us in trouble.
Jesus
so I'm
Christ.
not going to say that.
Sorry, hit the comment section really quick. Jason Mayer, shout out Central Michigan. Sam Dane, spot on impression. Mason, look, we all lived through the PTSD. Mason Petrino, he's been gone since 2019. Paul Petrino's been gone for quite some time. We can probably, I'm never going to actually let it go, but
Brian, you're the one who mentioned there's 2 quarterbacks playing, but they're not, it's not one running, one throwing. So just had to say the last time we saw 2 quarterbacks playing consistently at Idaho, that was what we had. So anyways, again, guys, we are really trying to just struggle through these last few games.
Jesus Christ.
Maybe a bit more interesting. Not really. NAU at North Dakota.
North Dakota.
NAU to me is they're NAU and Portland State are in a death match to me for the team that I am just completely over. Obviously, go in North Dakota because North Dakota picked up a win in their first week. Yeah, it was over Drake, but NAU's floundering. Much more, they're floundering level similar to Portland State, but at least with Portland State, you can talk about the resources. You can talk about not having their actual stadium, playing at a high school in a different suburb / town. NAU has the resources to be fine, but they're at the same level. So yeah, North Dakota.
Yeah, guys, this is North Dakota. I'm fully on with this. Northern Arizona, nobody cares. Flagstaff's a cool enough place, but your athletic department isn't, and especially not your football team. Nobody cares.
To clarify, Dallas, what you care about is you're hoping Chris Ball's done after this year because it sucks that this is what Northern Arizona is. They shouldn't be this low in the Big Sky.
No, they really shouldn't. But this is what happens when you hire a bad coach and then give him way too much time. Idaho is just recovering from that. Nothing else about this one, guys. Moving on to 2 games that are at least much more interesting. Weber State at Northern Iowa.
I'm going to give it to the Fighting Barbecue States.
Man, this to me is the toughest game to pick because neither team gave you much week one to take away with. Northern Iowa loses 30-9 to Iowa State. Weber State beats a D2 team. Weber State and Northern Iowa are also pretty dang close DNA-wise to the style of team they typically are, both defensive-oriented, typically don't score a ton. I'm going to go with Weber State for no reason other than that I am so sick of Northern Iowa always being 7-5, but somehow thought of as a sleeper or sneaking into the playoffs or always being grandfathered into the top 25. But there's real concerns for Weber. They did not look as good on the D line at all as they typically do. There's still talent in the secondary, but Jay Hill pillaged the secondary on his way over to BYU as well. And Weber, to me, unequivocally starts the least talented quarterback in the Big Sky. I don't think Weissler would start at any other Big Sky school. I'm counting Idaho State. I'm counting Northern Colorado. Jacob Sermon is not a talent-free dude. So I'm going with Weber State, but in my head, this is a 51%, 49% type of pick.
Yeah, I got to be honest. I picked Weber when I first looked at this game. I'm changing the pick. I'm going to say UNI, and it's only because it's at home. This is a game between two teams that are both kind of just mediocre, kind of coasting on reputation at this point. Hopefully Weber State turns it around. I don't have any ill will toward that program. I love the Weber State Weekly guys. Shout out Colby. Awesome dude. Again, you're hoping to see more. If you're a Weber State fan, you're hoping to see that the offense might do something more than just be just terrible. And Brian, like you said, Northern Iowa has been mediocrely good for so long. Yeah, they almost beat South Dakota State last year. Yeah, they almost beat Sac State last year. This will be a very close game. KB in the comment section saying, want Weber to win to keep Weber relevant for Big Sky rankings? Absolutely. If you're looking at the Big Sky as a whole, Weber State getting this means that, yeah, those top 6 teams are all fighting for playoff bids. That's what you want. But where this is on the road, I'm going to give it to UNI. I don't love that, and I'm immediately regretting saying it out loud. But that's what we're going with. Like Brian, like you said, it's 51-49.
Just funny because the moment I said Weber, I also started regretting having picked them. But whatever. Look, these teams are two relatively close overall. And look at Sagarin. Northern Iowa is at 101. If you look at Weber State and Sagarin, they're at 126. So Sagarin would say you made the right pick, but we'll stay there.
Rankings wise, Weber State number 12, UNI number 21. I don't know what poll that's in, but they're relatively close in the polls. I
do enjoy KB in the comment section who is fixating on the duster over my left shoulder. Full disclosure, this is an office space I share with someone who is not me, so I can't claim ownership of said duster. But KB, if Weber loses, yes, for you, I will break out the duster next week.
Guys, that takes us to our final game, which is actually a good game. Again, Weber State UNI, good game in the fact that they're close. Maybe as watching football goes, maybe not a good game. This one here has all the makings of a hopeful classic, which means I just cursed the shit out of it. Montana State at South Dakota State.
I'm going to go South Dakota State.
Dude, this is tough. Both teams looked great. Of course, South Dakota State was against Western Oregon. I think this means it's more important for South Dakota State just by the fact of them having one fewer potential playoff game to count. It is also at South Dakota State. I'm going to tepidly give this to South Dakota State over Montana State, but not quite as confident. I mean, the thing to me that's different is South Dakota State, Mark Gronowski, he can pass significantly better than what Tommy Milan or Sean Chambers can do. Both these teams can run. Both these teams have real big boy lines. They have real big boy defensive lines too. But because of the home edge, and just because like South Dakota State does not look like they've missed a beat after winning a title, I'm going to go with the Jackrabbits.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Jackrabbits as well. For anybody keeping score, they beat the piss out of Montana State last year. Yes, it was in December, and if you talk to anybody that has ever considered themselves a fan of Montana State football, they will tell you that it was rigged and that the field was icy and that so many other things that caused Montana State to lose that game, even though, again, both teams are playing on the same surface and both teams played in the same stadium and all the things that make logical sense. Anyways, all of that to say, Montana State brings back almost that entire team. South Dakota State loses a little bit more, but Brian, like you said, they bring back one of the best quarterbacks in the conference, or in their conference, one of the best quarterbacks, honestly, in the FCS. Certainly better than what Montana State is going to trot out there at least from a throwing standpoint. They bring back 4 of their 5 offensive line starters. They have a pair of twin receivers that are outstanding. They're the number 1 team in the nation for a reason. I know that Jimmy Rogers is only in his second game there as the head coach, but I just don't see it. I think San Diego State, boy, it's been a long night. South Dakota State, I think San Diego State would win this game too. South Dakota State wins this fairly close. I think it's going to be closer than that 39-18 in the playoffs last year, but I still think South Dakota State just has too much for Montana State.
Yeah, hit the comment section. Jack Schneider saying SDSU, and we have Patty saying, I think SDU's front seven is too good unless MSU can throw the ball with any consistency, that's just not how Montana State beats teams. But look, the other thread I have to get to in the comment section, hijacking the show again, the duster over my left shoulder. We have C. Hansen saying it's not Brian's, disappointing. Jason Mayer, the duster is $20 extra. Maybe I need to record a separate show to address the duster, but it's officially becoming, especially if Weber State loses, like I said, it will be a character next week.
Are we going to have to sweep up the remains of Weber State if we lose? Or can we use the duster? Because I don't want to get a broom.
Maybe if we get enough people to join at patreon.com/Tubs of the Club for #OnlyTubs, the Discord chat. Again, during football season, guys, it's the single best online place to be for Idaho games. It's super active. It has none of the annoyance that virtually all of the internet has with trolls because of some work we did. But honestly, it makes the games a lot more fun. And then these are a bunch of people that you can see at the games when you come in Moscow. So help us out, help us keep the lights on, helps me buy a couple extra whiskeys. But maybe what we need to do is if we get enough new patrons, we will just have a recurring segment with the duster.
Dallas, you're muted.
Damn it, you're right. I said, there we go. All right, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Again, patreon.com/Tubs at the Club. If you want to hang out on game day threads, that's the best place to do it. We had a couple different people sign up during the game last week. We will be monitoring the email. So if you decide come game day, you're watching it on either SWX, if you're local to the Spokane area, you're watching it. Again, I think you can sign up for free on the Mountain West website.
It's already free as it is. It is, according to someone who just DM'd me, it has been picked up by SWX and KTVB for the Boise market.
How about that? Look at that. So SWX, KTVB, if you're watching it online, Mountain West Network, come hang out with us. It's a lot of fun. You might have seen slapdicks getting thrown up on the screen a couple different times. I apparently infamously now called the Lamar announcers slapdicks in our Discord thread, and people made a joke out of it. So
you mean correctly?
I mean, it was pretty correct. I mean, come on. Although I thought Chavez looked great kicking and punting and doing kickoffs, he crushed all three of those. Anyways, guys, all of that to say, 4 p.m. on Saturday, Idaho at Nevada. We will be bringing you an instant reaction, maybe instantly after the game, maybe the next day. We'll figure it out instantly after the game.
Brought to you by Snake River Stampede Canadian Whiskey. Go Vandals.
Go Vandals.
This is producer Brian doing a terrible job of even finding what we're going to play us out with. So we're just going to call it good. See you guys Tuesday.